The peace talks failed. 21 hours of negotiations. No deal. And now the United States has just announced something that hasn't happened in modern history. A full naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. This isn't a threat anymore. It's happening. 21% of the world's oil passes through that strait every single day. And from this point forward, not one barrel moves without American permission. Oil prices, food prices, shipping costs, insurance rates, everything changes from here. And this affects every person watching this video. Let's start with what just happened. For the first time in 47 years, American and Iranian officials sat across from each other face to face. The meeting was in Islamabad. The U.S. delegation was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff. The talks ran for 21 hours straight. Iran refused to commit to abandoning its nuclear weapons program. That was the red line, and Iran would not cross it. Vance walked out and announced there was no deal. He called it, in his words, bad news for Iran. Hours later, Trump escalated. A full naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Announced, not negotiated. Declared, not discussed. But a blockade isn't just a military move. It is an economic weapon. A naval blockade means American warships physically control who enters and who exits. Every tanker, every cargo ship, every vessel, inspected or turned away. This is different from what Iran was already doing. Iran had restricted the strait with sea mines. That was passive. That was deniable. This is active. This is enforced. This is American warships deciding in real time which ships the global economy gets to keep. And under international law, a naval blockade is considered an act of war. The United States is now physically controlling the world's most critical shipping lane. And this creates a crisis that goes far beyond oil. But the oil shock comes first. So start there. 21% of global oil transits the Strait of Hormuz every day. Before this conflict began, oil was sitting near $80 a barrel. The conflict pushed it higher. A full blockade could push it past 150. Some analysts are already modeling 200. For context, every $10 of added oil price adds roughly 25 cents to a gallon of gas. But oil isn't just fuel. Oil is plastics. Oil is fertilizer. Oil is pharmaceuticals. Oil is the chemical base of the modern economy. When oil spikes, everything downstream spikes with it. Food, shipping, manufacturing, consumer goods. The receipt at the end of every supply chain is paid by the person at the end of it. And that person is you. But the oil shock is only the first wave. The second wave is worse. Ships that cannot transit the Strait of Hormuz have only one alternative. Go around Africa. That adds 2 to 3 weeks of travel and massive fuel costs to every single voyage. Shipping insurance for the region has already skyrocketed. Some underwriters have stopped writing policies for Gulf transit entirely. And the countries that depend on Gulf oil do not have weeks to wait. Japan, South Korea, India, and China. China imports roughly 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. A U.S. blockade of that strait is, by definition, a chokehold on China's energy supply. It does not matter what the stated target is. The effect is the same. Beijing now has to decide whether it will tolerate having its economy gated by an American admiral. This is where a regional conflict becomes a global one. And this is where it gets truly dangerous. Iran still has military assets in the region. Ballistic missiles, drones, fast attack boats, a submarine fleet designed specifically for this waterway. Iran's sea mines are still in the water, which means the U.S. Navy is now operating a blockade inside a mine strait. Every patrol, every inspection, every boarding happens in water that is already seeded with explosives. China has signaled it will not accept a disruption to its oil supply. Russia sees an opportunity. A distracted America is a useful America. Any incident is enough. A mine strike, a drone swarm, a misread radar signature, a junior officer making the wrong call under pressure. Any of those becomes the trigger. U.S. aircraft carriers are now sitting in one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. and there is no clear exit strategy. Nobody in Washington has explained how this ends. Nobody in Tehran has explained how they back down. Nobody in Beijing has explained what they will tolerate. The 2-week ceasefire suspension is technically still in effect. It is also, in practice, already breaking down. Iran has said it will not accept American terms. Trump has said, quote, "We win regardless." Oil markets are repricing in real time. Shipping companies are rerouting. Insurance is being canceled. Currencies are moving. Every hour that passes, the global economy adjusts to a new reality it did not choose. And the reality is this. The stability of the entire system is now resting on 33 kilometers of water. That is how wide the Strait of Hormuz is at its narrowest point. 33 kilometers. That is the margin. That is what 21% of global oil depends on. And this is the part that should concern everyone. For decades, the global economy has been built on an unspoken assumption. That the choke points stay open. That the oil keeps moving. That the ships keep sailing. That no one is reckless enough to actually close the tap. That assumption is now being tested in public. When a single waterway can decide the price of gasoline in Ohio, the price of bread in Cairo, the stability of factories in Shenzhen, and the solvency of airlines in Frankfurt, the system is not resilient. The system is fragile. It was always fragile. The blockade is just the moment the fragility became visible. And the viewer should understand what this means at a personal level. Gas will cost more. Groceries will cost more. Flights will cost more. Heating will cost more. Interest rates will have to respond. Central banks will have to respond. Governments will have to respond. And each of those responses lands, eventually, on a household. This is not a distant conflict. This is a pricing event for every economy on Earth. The talks failed. The blockade is beginning. And the 33 kilometers of water that 21% of the world's oil depends on is now under military control. Not Iran's. Not the UN's. One country's. This isn't a regional conflict anymore. This is a stress test for the entire global economy. And we are about to find out if it passes.